I have this GTE at the shop that I took out for a drive, and I kept hearing this rumble or this knocking from the rear. Figure out what it was, so I put the car up in the air to take a peek at the suspension to make sure there wasn't anything loose or banging around. So I was looking at you know, just normal stuff, bushings, shocks, see what's going on, you know, and you find all sorts of funny stuff. Like you see this bushing up here, that's a little weird, you know, why is there extension on the shock there? I looked at some of the other things, but then what happened was when I looked underneath here, I saw the problem, which if you look up in here, the spring shackle is not in the right position. The spring itself is on the inside. In other words, it's like kind of over center where it's supposed to be, and the spring shackle is actually pointing upwards as opposed to pointing down. And I think the best way to show you is on another car that I did the suspension. On this GTE that I'm in the process of putting back together, although it's a Series 1 car, it doesn't have the coilover on the spring, and there's a few more leafs on the leaf spring, the shackle is at least in the correct position. So when you look at the way this one is, the shackle is actually pointing downwards and not flipped upside down and hitting against the trunk floor. So when you look at that, it becomes pretty obvious why that one's making all those noises, because this is the way it's supposed to run underneath the car. So whoever installed that spring, that leaf spring, installed it incorrectly, or the other possibility is that they left too much slack on that limiting strap, and what it does is that when it lowers too far, that spring will actually pop to the inside. I don't think that that's what happened. I think the installation was wrong, because I don't think that the shock would even extend that far. So what ends up happening is it makes the spring sit lower than it should, so the car sits lower. And then what also happens is, if you look in here, it's banging up against the, if you look in here, the noise that I was hearing was the spring shackle hitting up against the trunk floor and banging around up there. I don't know if you can see the dents and everything that's happening up there. It's making all sorts of noise and banging around, because that's not where it's supposed to be. In fact, I think the noise is definitely coming from that. And so what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to take the suspension apart and make it right. It's a little involved. It takes I have a big spring compressor that flattens the spring out. You also have to take care of these limiting straps, because these cables actually keep that spring from going over center and flipping back into the way where it's wrong. But you'll see from the other, as you saw from the other car. This is the tool I have to use to take this spring out. It's a pretty hefty tool. It's used to flatten out the spring to get it in position so you can do all the work that you need. Just want to show you that I got the spring out, and we're looking up inside the wheel well, and that's the bolt that the spring is attached to. And look at the dent from that spring being turned upside down. That's what it was doing. That's what the rattling we heard was, just it banging. Every time the spring would flex, it would hit the bottom of the trunk floor and gouge that bottom of the trunk floor. So that's what we heard. That's what was put together wrong, and we're going to make it all right. This is what is inside the spring, and I think it's incorrectly installed. This thing is a bushing, so it fits inside the spring eye. And then you have these shackles that go in there. But the original design was a silent block, which is a rubber bushing. And what was in here, where this shackle goes and pivots, is supposed to be a sliding member, because as the spring moves, it has to kind of flex and rotate. This thing is kind of locked in place, but this is designed to slide. But someone's replaced this with a rubber bushing, and you can also see, even if it was new, it's starting to tear, because it's not designed, a rubber bushing is not designed to do the sliding that this spring is supposed to do. And the reason why you know that is because the bolt that is designed, that is put in here, is greasable. So in other words, this bolt is hollow, has a channel in it that goes through this and bolts through that. It's designed to be greased because grease is supposed to go in here. If it was supposed to have rubber in there, you would never have a greased fitting or grease fitting on here. So that's, as simple as I can put it, is not designed to have a rubber bushing. People put rubber bushings in here, it's wrong, because that's not the way it was designed. Is it better? Is it worse? Whatever. Look, I'm just trying to return it to the way it was originally designed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to press these bushings out. Once it's pressed out, I am going to machine this piece to fit inside there. That's the way it was designed to do, is once that's gone in, it's going to be a better material than the original. The original material was this like really soft piece, some kind of synthetic, but it wasn't very durable. So what ends up happening is this wallows out and it rattles inside the spring. Because what happens, I've seen it, and you've seen it before, is that when you put all this stuff in here in the spring, it pounds the bushing into pieces, and then it just rattles around. So when I make it out of this, the Delrin, it will fit in there the same way as the original bushing, but it will slide and pivot the way it was designed. And that's the plan on the next step for this rear suspension to get it right. I made the bushings, pressed this one in already. It's pretty nice and snug, but it still turns a little bit. And what was also missing on this car was the side plates, because these bushings are supposed to be, or these side plates are supposed to locate this end plate, and it's missing. If you look at the parts book, these plates are actually in the parts book. So they're often missing, and they're supposed to go inside the shackle like that. So we press the bushing in, put the two side plates in, and it locates this leaf spring like that. When you don't do it, this is what happens. And that's I see that as an often a mistake. I mean, if you put this thing together and you don't put the right parts in, you're gonna have a little play, and that swing, that little play is what causes the rear axle to kind of like settle in. Every time you go into a turn, it loads up, and then that play kind of changes the deflection of the whole rear suspension, and you know, it's no good. So we're gonna put that back in, and that's gonna make this tighten up this rear end a lot better. Well, it's done. Just to show you what we got here, the spring shackle is now in the right position. It's pointing downwards. So I got everything back together, bolted and torqued in place, and we're about to take this out for a test drive. It's raining right now, so we'll wait till tomorrow, but finally got this all done. It was a heck of a job. I mean, it's I don't know if it would have been better doing it on a lift, but for right now I just did it without the lift, and you know, got it all out and back in. So let's see what happens. All right, got the rear suspension done. Take it out for his first test drive. Make sure my hair isn't standing up, and let's take this out for a drive. Let's see what happens. here was knocking away on the suspension. So flipped the springs around, got them correct. Should have eliminated at least the knocking. What I need to do now is just figure out how's it sit. Cluck noise. And it's obvious because when you look at the pictures, I mean, yeah, everything was rubbing and hitting against each other. You can see the rub marks and the dents and everything like that. So reorienting the springs so that they didn't touch anymore certainly makes a big difference. Track straight, feels good, no wandering around, planted, feels good around the turns. Got this other road that I'm going to go on, it's a little bit more twisty and turny. I wanted to see first on a long straightaways to see how well it tracks straight if I change the alignment. Although it's a rear axle, you know, solid rear axle, not much adjustment you can do with the rear end, but as long as you put everything back the way it was, the locating arms kind of get everything the way I found it. So shouldn't have too much, but you know, you never know until you put everything back together and then take it out for a test drive just to see how it sits. But so far it feels good, track's nice and straight.